Hello church, here we are in Jeremiah chapter 50. And one of the things that Kevin and I really want to accomplish with these videos that we're doing throughout this entire year, we have a couple things we want to accomplish. One of them is that we want to teach people how to engage with the scriptures, with the Lord on their own. So that next year when you do this, or some other time when you're doing this at a Bible study or wherever, we understand this principle of engaging with the scriptures, asking the Lord. It's a bit like that SMORP acronym, right? Engaging with scripture, asking the Lord, what's the message in it? Is there a step of obedience I should take? Or is there something I should be repenting of? And then with that thought in mind, spending some time in prayer with the Lord, right? And so here in chapter 50, I want to give you some examples of how you could do that. You could use these as an example, but you don't have to. You could pick a different verse. But one thing you could do is, for instance, when I read verse 6, it says, their shepherds have led them astray. That thought right there is actually very gripping to me because I realize that I play a role as a shepherd in our church. However, everybody actually has an aspect of leadership in their life, whether they are working in the church in a ministry area or not. Everybody leads somebody to some degree at the very least. And so we could think about verses like 1 Peter 5 that tells us how to be shepherds. Not lording it over people, not doing it for money or for power, but rather as one to serve. We could think about, it reminds me of what Paul said in 1 Corinthians 11, how he said, if you follow my example, you're actually following Christ because he's following Christ. And so right out of just that half of a sentence out of verse 6, I might spend some time there with the Lord and say, Lord, am I leading others in a way that makes them end up following you? Ask the Lord a question like that, and then when you ask him that question, stay there long enough and have a conversation with the Lord. Allow him to respond, and he might lead you to something, identifying something in your life or another scripture or so on. It's going to be an awesome time with the Lord. But that's just one example. You could do the same thing with verse 7. In verse 7, it talks about how the Babylonians justified their mistreatment or devouring of the Israelites because they had seen that the Israelites have sinned against their Lord. And so it's one person justifying bad actions towards another person because of that person's bad actions, where it's kind of like they're justifying their actions that are wrong because of someone else's wrong. And you and I know that two wrongs don't make a right? It's like in Romans chapter 12 talks about how revenge is not ours. And so we know that that is actually not the right behavior. We could talk to the Lord about whether we have ever done that. You could ask the Lord a simple question. Lord, have I ever tried to justify bad actions in my own life based on someone else's bad actions? It's actually a powerful question if you but don't just rush away from that. Just park there long enough that the Lord can bring some thoughts and memories back to your mind and spend time there with the Lord. If you don't like those, here's another good one. You could connect verse 11 and verse 29. And so here the Babylonians, it says, but because you rejoice and are glad, you who pillage my inheritance. The Babylonians probably didn't think they were pillaging the Lord's inheritance. They probably thought they were just punishing their enemies, the Israelites, not realizing it was the Lord. Those people are the Lord's inheritance. That's quite different, right? In the end of verse 29, it talks about how Babylon has defied the Lord, the Holy One of Israel. They probably didn't realize they were picking a fight with God when they were punishing the Israelites. But that's actually what was happening. A similar thing happens in the New Testament. In Acts chapter 9, remember when Saul was on his road to Damascus and he sees this, he was persecuting the followers of the way, also persecuting God's followers. And then Jesus meets him on that road and says, why are you persecuting? And Paul might have thought he would say, why are you persecuting the Christians or the followers of the way? Right? What does Jesus say? Why are you persecuting me? And so what we have to realize when we look at verses like 11 and 29 is that when our treatment towards God's people is actually our treatment toward God himself. Wow. Suddenly that makes you really reevaluate how you treat people in the church, doesn't it? Doesn't it make you reevaluate how you treat your Christian neighbors and so on? We're actually treating God how we treat them. You could ask the Lord, Lord, would you like me to change how I treat some of my Christian friends and neighbors? That might be a place to park with the Lord. But whatever you do today, do not rush through chapter 50. Spend time there. Ask the Lord, which of these verses would you like me to park on? And then just park on one of them, have a conversational prayer with the Lord, and enjoy his presence today.